Storytelling, leadership, do they really go hand in hand? Can somebody who has been promoted from, I don't know, head auto mechanic, all of a sudden be the leader of the entire company? It depends. It depends on how good a storyteller you are, and some of that translates to leadership. Somebody who knows a lot about leadership and storytelling is this gentleman that I've had on once before. Today he's a guest on the Bo Live, Kirian Therakin from where in Canada are you from, Kirian?
Alberta, Canada.
Wow.
Just above Montana there.
I've never been to Montana. I've never been to Alberta either. So tell me the relationship. We'll start with the meat right off the bat. The relationship between leadership, being a good leader, and being able to be a storyteller as a leader. Why do you need to be a good storyteller to be a leader?
Well, the only thing that anybody ever buys into of you, from you, for you at the beginning is your story. Right. That's it. It's your story. If the story doesn't have functional relevance and emotional significance for to the audience, whether that be your employees, your customers, your stakeholders, various kinds, they won't buy into anything else, including your leadership, let alone your products and services. So that's why it's so important that you recognize that the story is the very first thing that anybody buys from you.
So even if you're not the best leader, but if you have one awesome story, there's a chance that they'll follow you.
A great leader with a poor story becomes a poor leader. But even a mediocre leader with a great story has the opportunity to become a great leader. So it's actually a dual orbit. And so the leader orbits the story, the strategic narrative orbits the leader, and they derive their power from each other.
Ah, I see. That's great. Now, you're in a company called Strategy Peak, right?
Strategy Peak, sales and marketing advisors.
Okay, and you teach that concept a lot, and when you advise clients and companies, right? I would think.
Without question. In fact, it is the center of your brand, and I work with a lot of startup companies, most of whom did not go to school to be salespeople, let alone marketing people. They are subject matter experts in their technology, in their in whatever it is, right? And so they're PhDs and scientists and engineers, but they find themselves in this position where they have to sell their ideas, to market their concepts in order to raise capital, let alone build marketplaces. And the easiest way to do that is to tell a story. You know, you may not be a great salesperson, but you can definitely become a great storyteller.
Some people have it naturally. Some people kind of have to learn it, I suppose. And that's where your company, your firm comes in. Then you kind of coach people into letting it come out, I guess, that way or something. How does that work?
Absolutely. You know, like if you've started a company and around this idea of yours, you've bought into your own story. Let's capture the energy.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Let's say that again.
So if you've started this company, okay, you've started this product launch, you've bought into your own story. I want to capture the charisma and the energy and the drive of what allowed you and this inciting incident to enter the marketplace. And once we do that, we want to transfer that energy to the people as a whole, people that never heard of you, but people that will buy into that story. And so what I tell my staff, and I have a couple of investments here in Edmonton, different types of companies. And I say one of the clearest things you are in the business of is you're in the business of the transfer of energy transfer. So people look to you to see how much energy and belief and drive they should have in your presence. So if you're low energy, they're going to be low energy. If you're high energy, they're going to be high energy. And then it's that transfer of that energy, that passion and that charisma and that excitement through the story, the channel, the story is the channel, the story is the medium that allows your prospect, your investors, your people to come alive.
Golden nuggets from this guy right here. I call them golden nuggets because it's like so valuable. So that's great. If you have any particular questions, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even Twitch. If there's a question that you have for Kirian regarding leadership, storytelling, and basic business in general, just pop him into the chat here and we'll get him to answer. You wrote a book, The 7 Leaders. Wait a minute. Say it for me.
The 7 essential stories charismatic leaders tell.
Oh man, I'm sorry I messed that up. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Can you tell me what the seven oh Jesus. Can you tell me what the 7 stories are? I'm sorry, it's lunchtime.
Well, these 7 stories are primal stories. They exist in your prospects' heads, your investors' heads, your employees' heads, right? So there's different stories to appeal to different marketplaces that you are going after, but they revolve around central themes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the stories are primal in nature. They exist in your clients' heads, prospects' heads, etc., whether you want them to or not, because it's necessary for them to answer these questions contained in the stories. The stories deliver the answers to these questions in order for them to commit to you, whether that's to buy into you or buy from you. And so these 7 stories, very quickly: creation and origin, identity, beliefs, and values is story 2. Story 3 is the big idea. What's that central, theme that everything else is organized around? Story 4 is the enemy we face, which is something that we fight for or we fight against. Story 5 is the mighty wins, which is all about the big macro trends that force you, that fight against you, or that actually propel you forward. You really have to be cognizant of what these big macro trends are. Story 6 is all about the journey we must undertake. If the first 5 stories are true, then they're the left-hand side of the equation. Then the right-hand side of the equation says, well, then it's obvious that this is the journey we must undertake. And then story 7 is what we call a meta-narrative. And a meta-narrative is simply a single telling of the previous 6 stories in one sitting, much shorter, that allows you to install the entire story base in your marketplace's head. And the only difference between those stories and the meta-narrative, story 7, it's the why we will win story. It's the addition of keystone elements. And keystones are things that guarantee the win. And certain keystones, you'll recognize there's hundreds of keystones, but it could be things like superior people, superior strategy, better technology, better strategy. It could be a lot of different things. But now, look, that is why I'm going to follow this leader. And people don't follow leaders first. Usually they have to follow a leader and their story together. Remember, it's a dual orbit.
Yes.
It's a dual orbit. So, I really like this guy, but kind of the stuff he's been talking about lately, it's nuts. And we can see this in politicians for sure.
Oh,
right?
sure. Yes. There's a lot of that.
If you don't have that kind of belief in the story that the leader is possessing and reverberating, then you're going to lose confidence.
Some people just don't carry it off well.
Yeah. Whatsoever.
But they're in positions of authority, and that and it's I'm being very general because I don't want to get as specific on any particular person, but you must have had some clients then in your firm that they have a lot of knowledge, like you say, but they just don't tell stories well, or they don't come off well. So what's the steps, or can you say, in coaching somebody who isn't a good storyteller to become a good storyteller?
Well, the first most obvious thing is self-realization, that the only thing that we have in our life to guide our actions is the stories that we tell ourselves.
Sure.
What's the purpose? What's the mission? What's the vision? Including everything from your family to your business to your place in society. We all operate on stories, and the stories are the central part of the culture that you adopt in order to find your place in this world. Culture's only real definition is the knowledge used to survive and thrive in your environment. So family, business, society, and there's all sorts of different places that you occupy. So once you develop that self-realization, whoa, I have to tell my own stories, and that's the way I operate, I better get cracking on creating that story for my marketplace as well, for what I want people to buy into. And you already know what that is for yourself. Now what we have to do is validate that for the marketplace itself. So I'm just going to help you tell the story you're already telling yourself.
Can you provide some real world examples of people, I guess business leaders and people would know, of good storytellers, leaders that are also great storytellers?
Well, I think the clearest example, is Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was a brilliant storyteller, even telling stories that we ourselves did not realize we needed to hear. And prior to the iPad being released, if you remember way back when, I thought I wanted a smaller laptop, but there's always a problem. It didn't have as much RAM as I wanted, didn't have the battery life I wanted. And what I wanted was, and I didn't need a full-on computer. I needed something to look things up and to quickly take notes and maybe craft some documents. But I didn't need the power of a full high-end laptop. So when I saw that iPad for the very first time, that's what I want. That's what I want. All of the lights came on and there was lust that was triggered in my head. And so there's an example of everything about that story being embedded in the product design itself. And ultimately, Apple is not a consumer products company. They are a design company. That and yes, they have had some profound hits, and they've developed product categories like that tablet category and things like that. But if we take a look at it, lots of other people had that technology available as well. Jobs was able to take that story and embed it in design.
Well, that's the thing. You have this Apple versus Android thing out there, and the only real difference, I mean, obviously there's some tech differences, maybe a little. The difference between Apple and Android is the Steve Jobs sort of story. Who in Samsung has something like that? Do you know any names?
Well, I have no, Samsung, and here's the other part of it. Samsung is some kind of monolithic, megalithic Korean company, and they've had tremendous hits amongst itself. I have a couple of Samsung TVs and all sorts of things, right? But one of the stories that I bought into myself, so not only have I bought into the superior design of Apple products and things like that, I've also bought into the story of Samsung ripped off the design of the Apple ecosystem, the Apple operating system, right? And not the Apple operating system, the Apple phone. And they conspired with Google to rip off the operating system that made it look and feel like a iPhone. So I don't want to reward that behavior. And because I bought into that story, I'll never own a Samsung product. I'll never own a Samsung phone.
Wait a minute, you had a TV, you said. You had a TV, you said.
But I've got a TV, but you know what? They ripped off, my good friend Steve. And so I'm not buying an Android product. That's the story I'm telling myself. Okay, I don't want to reward theft behavior. Interesting, right? Yeah.
Yes, I get. Yes, very. Obviously, you're an Apple fan.
I'm an Apple fan. I'm absolutely an Apple fan.
Well, okay. Truth be known, well, I can't show you the title, but this is a Samsung phone.
Well, there you go, right? And you know what? And as you just flashed it, that could have easily been on that quick flash. I thought that was an iPhone.
It could be.
Which supports my story.
Yeah,
Samsung and Android ripped off Apple. I'm not going to reward that behavior. So it's a story.
It is a story.
It is.
And and it's all about storytelling. It really is. Wow, this time's gone by rather quickly. It's half past the hour already. I'd like to have you on again at some point, Kirian, maybe into the new year, and we'll dive deep into something further. But right now, I want to ask you a couple of questions, and they have nothing to do with what we just said.
Okay.
Although there's a lot of sound bites in there, and this will be released as a standalone recorded podcast in 2 or 3 weeks, so you get more exposure out of it. But what's your favorite movie?
I got a few. The Godfather trilogy is way up there. I also love this movie called Heat. It's Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. It's a phenomenal story about a bank robber and a cop. And just two of my favorite movies of all time. The Godfather trilogy, which is obviously three movies, and then The Heat. Brilliant movies.
We have a comment regarding Apple. I need to show you.
Okay, sure.
I know this gentleman, Tim Silver.
Well, it's not about the apple in that story, right? It's actually about what do you call it? Lying and deception and the discovery. And there were actually two trees in the Garden of Eden. There's the tree of knowledge and the tree of everlasting life. and they were banished from the Garden of Eden for tasting of the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge. And before they had the opportunity to taste of the tree of everlasting life, God banished them. And because he did not want that kind of thing to happen. Now, there's a few holes in that narrative, but it's an interesting
Yes. I know Tim. He puts on. He's a funny man. He puts on events for businesses, and he's into comedy and clowns, and that's what he's. So thanks, Tim. That was cool to write that. Kieran, one more question here. If you had a time machine, you could go back in time and visit somebody who's not here anymore. Doesn't have to be famous. One person back in time. Who might you pick?
Well, this might be a little dangerous, but I would, but I would go back and I would visit probably Alexander the Great. And there's two actual individuals. Alexander the Great would be one. There's about 300 years separating these two, and the second one would be Octavian, which is Augustus Caesar. And both these individuals, they were groomed for positions of great influence, of power, and leadership. But they both went in at the age of 19. And if I recall what I was up to when I was 19 years old, it wasn't taking over the Macedonian army. And then over the next 12 years, running roughshod over the known world and becoming the leader of that known world at that point in time, and having all these cities named Alexandria after you. And if you take a look at Augustus Caesar, same kind of thing. Octavian, who became Augustus Caesar, he took over those reins of power at the age of 19 and was able to bring to heel a very established political apparatus that was all thinking that they were smarter and older and more established than this young boy. But he reigned for the next 60 years. And, and that was the whole ushering of the age of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. How did a 19-year-old boy do that? And what I say is why it's dangerous is these guys were also absolutely ruthless as well. But as long as I was guaranteed my safety, I'd love to go and have dinner with them.
Oh, okay. We'll put a shield around you.
Yeah, as long as I was guaranteed my safety.
It'd be fun to have coffee or conversation. Kieran Therikin. You're a professor, right? Am I correct in this?
I'm not a professor. Sometimes I come across as a professor. I'm boring in that way. A lot of inane trivia. But I have a company called Strategy Peak, which is a sales and marketing advisory company for businesses that want to enter, grow, and scale in marketplaces. So
what's your website? A lot of startups. Strategypeak.com is your website.
Strategypeak.com, yeah.
And this guy knows what he's talking about. The book is called The 7 Essential Stories that Charismatic Leaders. Oh, jeez.
Charismatic Leaders.
The first time I interviewed you, I had it correct. I did it right. The 7 Essential Stories that Charismatic. Oh, jeez.
The 7 Essential Stories Charismatic Leaders Tell.
Charismatic. It won't come out of my. And you're a voice guy too, Chris. What's going on with that? All right, Kieran. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again. I appreciate your time today,
Chris. Thanks for having me on. There we go. Live long and prosper.
Live long and